I'm Greg Powell, and this is Investors Insights.
You're listening to Investors Insights with President and CEO Greg Powell and the Portfolio Strategy team at Five Plan Partners. 3, 2.
Welcome to a special edition of Investors Insight. Today at our Five Plan Partners studio, we are honored to have Alabama Congressman Gary Palmer. Before this recording, Congressman Palmer graciously met with local business owners here in our office to share his insight and have dialogue on current and crucial issues going on in Washington, D.C. It is interesting to note that prior to being elected to the 114th Congress in 2014, Congressman Palmer had never served in office before. Previously, he had served on 4 different Alabama state commissions on behalf of 3 governors, Fob James, Bob Riley, and Robert Bentley. In Congress, Gary is focused on paying down the national debt, lowering energy costs, spurring economic growth and job creation, and health care. Congressman Palmer also serves on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee, the Budget Committee, and the Space, Science, and Technology Committee. Congressman, and it's great to call you Congressman, thank you for being here on Investors Insights.
Glad to be here.
So you gave an inspiring message in our breakfast this morning. And from the standpoint of what you're dealing with, regulatory and on energy, I walked out of that room with a lot of hope. And so on that note, just discuss a little bit with us of life in D.C. and things you're dealing with.
Well, I'm on the Budget Committee, as you mentioned, and one of the things that I really wanted to focus on was getting us back, first of all, to passing a budget.
Right.
We hadn't had a budget in 6 or 8 years, and getting us to a balanced budget. And at the end of March, we passed a budget that balances in 9 years, has a surplus in the 10th year, sent the bill over to the Senate.
Yeah.
To do what's known as reconciliation, and we can only do that one time, and the reason you do it is the Democrats can't filibuster, so it can be passed with 51 votes. They just sent it back last Friday and came back to the Budget Committee, and we voted it out.
Yeah.
So that the budget is going to go to the president's desk. People think about the budget as in terms of how much money we're going to spend, but it's also a policy statement.
Right.
And one of the things, as you mentioned, that I've been focused on is energy policy. The United States has a 40-year self-imposed ban on exporting crude oil. And this nation is literally floating in oil.
Right.
We have one formation that has 3 trillion barrels by itself. That's 3 times what the entire world's used in the last 100 years, and 5 or 6 times the number reserved the Saudis. I was able to get it into the budget as a policy statement that we would repeal that ban.
That's outstanding.
And the bill was introduced, and last Friday, we passed that bill. So that's going to the Senate. So I'm very encouraged about some of the policy opportunities that we're having in Congress. And I think it's absolutely critical that as Republicans in the majority in the House and in the Senate, that we define ourselves by what we're for and not what we're against.
Well, and that's fantastic, and I can't thank you enough for doing that. One of the things that we've talked about here is how the Fed's fighting deflation. People need to see that price at the gasoline pump come down to help ignite some inflation in this economy. And we can't thank you enough for fighting to get rid of that ban.
Well, right now, household energy costs are particularly burdensome to low-income families. Families that earn less than $30,000 a year are spending 24% of their disposable income just on energy. And you think about that in the context of low-income families, but also families on fixed incomes. There are 25 million households in which the principal householder is over age 65, a lot of your clientele.
Right.
And this is going to be very important to them that we not only take on the energy equation, but the regulatory environment.
Yeah.
And I pointed out to the group we met with earlier that regulations cost our economy $2 trillion last year. That's over $15,000 per household. It has a disproportionate negative impact on low-income families and families on fixed incomes, and it's real money.
Yeah.
And it doesn't generate anything. It doesn't create an economic benefit. It actually creates a drag on the economy.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that I've proposed is that rather than having one big committee take on regulatory reform is that we break this up into each segment of the economy. You could have 50 or 60 little committees or little task forces that are dealing with this and work to get rid of the obsolete regs, get rid of the duplications in regulations, and get it down to the regulations we need, simplify them, so that every business knows exactly what they've got to do to comply with federal regulations. And if we did that and we could reduce the regulatory cost by, let's say, 20%, that's $400 billion, real dollars that go back into the economy every year. And as I pointed out, that's half of what we spent on the stimulus in 2009. So that's the kind of stuff that we're trying to do. And I think that not only helps business, but it's going to help families.
Sure. And then in being on the budget committee, what's that been like for you?
That's been a lot of fun for me, and that sounds kind of sick, I guess. But it is the most demanding committee.
From our perspective, that's great.
I think the Budget Committee is arguably the most demanding committee in Congress, especially the first 3 months, because when we're in session, we're meeting just about every day and sometimes twice a day because you're going through the whole budget. And I wanted to be on the Budget Committee because that's where you learn where everything is. And it's also, though, like I said, the opportunity to address policy, because the budget is more than just a budget. It's a policy statement. And it's, in my opinion, it was the perfect fit for me. And I've had a great relationship with the chairman, great relationship with the Budget Committee. Even when I chose my office is directly across the hall from the Budget Committee staff. So I've really enjoyed that. I'm on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee, and that literally has oversight over all of the federal government. And generally not a committee that you want to be called to testify before, because a lot of those are people who have done something wrong. But I've enjoyed that. And then I'm on the Space Science and Technology Committee, which is very important for the state of Alabama with what we've got in Huntsville with aerospace, but also here with the research that's taking place at UAB and Southern Research. And I've really enjoyed that.
That's great. From the standpoint of vision down the road, what would you like history to say over the next couple of years?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because I don't speak a lot in conference, but the day after Boehner resigned, in conferences when all the Republicans meet together, I talked about how we need to create a narrative that not only that we can see ourselves in, but that the American people can see themselves in, and give people a vision for what we can do. And I'd had a meeting with the chairman of the Joint Economic Committee, and a couple of days before I met with him, and I shared this with him, but another member asked me what I'd like to be able to say after 10 years of Congress, assuming I'm in Congress 10 years. And I said, well, I don't know what I'd like to say, but I can tell you what I don't want to say. I don't want to get up one morning and say, well, Palmer, you just spent 10 years in Congress. If that's all I can say, Greg, then 2 years is enough. If it's just a bucket list. I said, but what I'd really like to have happen is 10 years after I leave Congress, have somebody walk up to me and say, Mr. Palmer, you were part of the greatest Congress this country's ever had. And I told the conference that whether or not anybody can ever say that is up to us. We got some of the smartest people in the country in that room. There's not a single issue that we can't solve if we set our mind to it.
I agree.
And it's up to us. And I think we're going to take it on. And I reminded the chairman of the Joint Economic Committee that in 1959, when the Soviets launched Sputnik, it sent shockwaves through the country. We immediately ramped up our aerospace program. We started getting kids in science and engineering and mathematics. And the interesting thing is, and this is so who we are as Americans, we never made it our objective to catch up with the Soviets. We didn't make it the objective to get even. We set as our objective to put a man on the moon before the end of the decade, and we did. What we need in Congress is a man on the moon vision. We need to be willing to take on the hard things. We need to tell the American people what they can expect from us, but we need to communicate to the American people what we need from them. And I think if we do that, I think the American people will follow us.
That is fantastic comments, and I appreciate you sharing that from the heart.
thanks for
Absolutely. We can't thank you enough. This morning's been great. I think you can see now why we are proud to have Gary Palmer in Congress, and also that he's a leader that has a vision, and it's a vision that he includes others in to move forward. So thank you, sir. We appreciate it very much.
Thanks, Greg.
So,
More information at fiplanpartners.com. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, SIPC.